Who were your biggest influences in comedy when you were starting out?
Well, when I was starting out, I guess I used to listen to George Carlin a lot and Robert Klein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That first Robert Klein album, Child of the 50s.
Oh my God.
Goodness.
So great.
Yeah.
I actually met George Carlin with my friend Dave Anderson. We were in an acting class together, and we decided we just didn't want to go that day. And we went to lunch at the Ivy on the Shore.
Oh.
And he was there.
Oh.
And we went and said hi to him. And he was really kind.
He's a nice man. Yeah.
Yeah, really good guy. And then he and I went to the same ENT, George Carlin and I, because we were both. He was a screamer. And so, you know, how he abused his voice.
Wow.
And I, one time, I woke up, and I don't think I abused my voice, but one day I woke up and I started to speak, and nothing came out. Absolutely nothing came out.
Wow.
I know, so I went to see this ENT who looked like Albert Einstein. And I was not permitted to speak for a week. I had to just write notes in a notebook. But that was very funny that I met him there.
Well, I told you my George Carlin story, haven't I?
What is it?
Working in Vegas, opening for the Unknown Comic. Oh, so I'm opening for the Unknown Comic, and the shows are at 6 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the 6 o'clock show one night to 14 people, and I'm just dying. You know, it's a big, you know, theater, and I'm just dying, 14 people. And I've talked to everyone in the audience. There's one guy sitting all by himself.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, maybe I can pull this out. There's one last guy. And as I'm just thinking that, George Carlin walks in the back of the room. And I'm just dying. Dying. And so I say to this guy, and where are you from, sir? And he says, Minnesota. And it was a guy with an artificial larynx.
Yes.
And I said, oh, what brings you out here? He said, I have cancer, this is my last trip. And so not only am I dying, but I'm talking to this guy, and George Carlin is sitting in the back of the room watching this. And I knew he was going to come backstage after the show, and I ran up to my room and hid. So
of course, yes.
Yeah, I'm so embarrassed.
Of course. It's such a strange thing that we do. You know, we fly to these cities, and then we like maybe rent a car, and we try to make a room full of strangers laugh. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre way to make a living.
It is. But fortunately, we found it. Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
Life.
And how do you guys balance comedy with your personal life? Because you guys were always on the road, right?
We were, yes.
Well, Cathy more so than me, but
yes.
I was in town more and had no personal life, so it didn't make a difference. But Cathy actually had a personal life.
I had a personal life.
And was on
I was married. Now I'm not. But I still have a personal life.
But not because of the road.
The road did not impinge on my marriage. But
big,
other
big
things
edit there.
other things impinged on my marriage. Repeat the question. Yeah, I like to have a personal life. It's important to me to have a personal life. So, you know, I just make it my business. I go out with friends, and because the thing is, I know I'm not
it's a whole different life.
But the thing is that if you don't have another life, then what do you write about?
That's why I have no act. Yeah.
It's important.
Those are the people that I'm.
It's important to have things to. It's important to replenish your well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jimmy, you said that you don't have a life, but it was because it was so like, because working on the Tonight Show for so long, that was like hardcore, like every night having to like come up with new material. That's like, how was it like?
But not for me. I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but my job was to pick the jokes with Jay. So I was more editing jokes. I didn't have to sit in that room.
And create them, right?
Yeah, with
but
the
it's
newspaper.
Still every night.
Right, they did. But it was every night. It was, they were 14-hour days.
Wow. Can you tell us how it used to be the process?
I used to go to Jay's house every night at 10 o'clock at night, and we would work until 2 in the morning on the monologue.
Wow.
you know, going through hundreds of jokes for the next day, and we'd get maybe half the monologue done, 12 to 15 jokes maybe.
Wow.
So at least we had a good base we
Right.
knew going in the next day. And then I would come in the afternoon, and we would add another 10 jokes to the monologue.
Wow.
Maybe, you know, Jay would have been, he was reading jokes from 9 in the morning until I got there at 2 in the afternoon. And he would have read 400 jokes maybe at that
Wow.
point, and have picked out 100 or 150 that he liked and had them put on cards. And then I would go through the cards and go, I like this one, I like this one.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you did this 5 days a week?
yeah, Sunday night.
Do you remember one time I came?
And I booked all the comics on the show too.
Wow.
So I was in the clubs then every night after the show and before I went to Jay's at 10 o'clock.
Mhm.
So I would go 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 at night for 5 years. And then someone else booked the comics after that. So my schedule was a little easier after that, but it was,
It was really intense.
yeah,
Oh my
it was a
God.
lot of hours. And I had a relationship at that point.
That's
I was
right,
dating
you
someone.
did, that's right.
I don't know how I
I
fit
guess
that in.
maybe the busier you are,
I gotta get busy.
you better get busy, Jim. Do you remember one time, I don't know if you remember this, but one time I came up to Jay's house and did that
worked
with,
with us?
and did that with you
Oh.
guys, yeah.
And what did you think of that process?
I thought it was really fascinating, but of course I only did it one night.
It's interesting. Comics think it's fascinating. Writers think, oh, it's pretty dope. They think it's going to be really funny.
Oh,
You know, someone that's writing an article about Jay
Right.
would want to come up and do it. And they think, oh, it's going to be so funny, laughing, and it was just serious.
Yeah,
in, out,
it's-
in, out. Yeah, it was
Right.
just serious.
but it was,
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting,
It was interesting. You know, and Seinfeld would come up a couple times.
yes.
And Jerry would want to sit there and rewrite the jokes and take time. But Jay just wanted to get, no, he had to make a decision.
Right.
In or out, in or out.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
I think I may have come up before Jay was full-time.
When he was
I
guest
think it was-
hosting.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
More people came up at that
yeah,
point and would sit in sometimes.
Yeah.
But once it got every night, 5 nights a week, it was just Jay and me.
Mm.
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated during tough times in your career?
wow.
Boy, I just love
Um,
doing it. Is my answer. I think
Um,
even with tough times.
I think, I mean, I think a lot of it is just inertia.
Mm.
I mean, I remember Jerry saying that one time. It's just, it's what I do.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned getting older is that bad times come and go and good times come and go. You think that the bad times are going to last forever, and they don't. They pass. And it's with wisdom and time, it becomes easier to remember that. When you're younger, it's harder to remember that. But when you're feeling shitty about whatever it is, it passes. It passes. And when things are good, you don't think those are ever going to pass either, but they do. I mean, good times pass too.
Yeah. I have a friend that was talking to me a while back about his son was going through a tough time because he
Mhm.
felt he was kind of all alone at school or different or something.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, he doesn't know that once he gets to college, there'll be 10 kids like him that want to do theater, and there'll be 100 kids like
Yep.
There's just the circle's not big enough. He doesn't know because he's
So young.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as you get older,
You know,
yeah.
another thing I remember about being young versus being older. You and I were both in Vegas. We were working different rooms,
Mm.
and Ronnie Shakes had just died,
I remember that.
and it was devastating. I was in my 30s.
He was a great
He
comic
was a
friend. of
terrific
ours.
comic.
Great, yeah.
And he was 41 or 42 years old,
Yeah.
and he died of a heart attack.
And married to my old girlfriend.
Sue was your old girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's how they met.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She would come into the clubs with me. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's wild.
I did have a life.
That's right. And it passed.
She married Ronnie and then someone else. Yeah.
But I
Yes.
remember calling my mother
Ah.
from my hotel room and telling her what had happened, And she said, you know, when you're young, you have this illusion of immortality.
Oh.
And you just don't realize that everything is finite. And, you know, from her perspective, it was so different from where she sat. You know?
Wow, that's it. Because I think you called me with that news in Vegas. I think I heard it from you, Cathy.
Really?
I think. I mean, because
I remember
we didn't have the internet in those days.
Right.
And, you know,
I remember, and you were at Bally's, and I was at the Dunes. Yeah.
Tales.
Yeah.
And this was a great comic.
Oh,
Really funny.
He was like one of the first of us to get the Tonight Show. He may have been the first of us.
Yeah, and he had great jokes, and Johnny loved him. And
Great.
Wonderful. You had a wonderful joke about going to a psychiatrist, you know?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Tell it.
Well, let me see. He would go. His psychiatrist said something to him the other day
That brought tears
that
to
brought
my eyes.
tears to my eyes. He said, "No habla español."
I'm
No habla inglés.
Yeah,
Excuse me,
I
no
don't speak
habla
English.
inglés.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I didn't know the Spanish, but
Right,
yeah,
right,
that's why
right.
I said that joke.
Right.
But a great joke, and he was out jogging with his wife in Akron.
In Akron, Ohio. Right.
And had a heart attack on the side of the road, and this was before cell phones,
Yeah.
and died in her arms.
Oh.
And just, you know, just heartbreaking.
Welcome to the Comedy and Magic Club.
Yeah.
I know it was a tough passing. I mean, that was like one of the first of the tragedies in our community.
Yeah.
You know?
Early on. Yeah. There was a comic, Carrie Allen, that had passed away earlier.
That's
than
right.
you in New York, but
That's right.
yeah, that young we went.
Yeah, I mean now, you know, look, this is happening unfortunately more and more frequently. You know people who are like, I know this took a terrible turn, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to start talking about death, but you know, whatever. Ask us another question, and then we'll get us out of this thing.
But I'll tell you a sad thing about
What? Oh, good.
talking to Sue,
Yes.
Ronnie's wife.
Yes.
She said the hard part for her was, you know, when Ronnie passed away, you know, everyone was, you know, sending their condolences and
Right.
a lot of interaction. And then the phone stopped ringing after a while, and she was all alone.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to remember when somebody loses someone, to start calling them like 3 months later.
Yeah, I didn't
Because
know.
that
You know, it never
is
occurred
when
to me. Yeah.
that is when the calls stop. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're bringing it further down.
Do you have any questions about funerals
No.
or anything like that?
I know Richard already asked you last week, but we want to hear from you, Cathy.
Yeah.
What's the first joke that you wrote that you were proud of?
Well, the first joke that I wrote that I thought really defined me and made a difference in my act was I was very, very skinny when I started. I was thin, much thinner than I am now, and I got up on stage and I said, "Oh God, I better slow down. I just ate. I had a Cheerio," and that got a huge laugh, and that really taught me something, that I had to put myself in the audience's perspective and say, what do they see when they see me on stage? And they saw an incredibly, what is that? They saw an incredibly skinny woman. Was that the booze cars?
Yes.
They're bringing food. Skinny woman. But I tell people this all the time, young comics starting out.
Yes.
To address what the audience sees.
Right.
When they come up there, like Louis Anderson, I give that example.
Right.
He had to do fat jokes. He hated doing fat jokes,
Yes.
but had to address it.
Yes.
And once he got it out of the way,
Then you can go
they didn't
anywhere.
see it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can either address what the audience sees or what they hear. Whatever it is that is most prevalent when you're on stage and start speaking to them, you have to address that.
Yeah.
Or else they're just going to be lost in their heads thinking about it.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So that was a big lesson for me.
Like, what advice would you give to someone just starting in stand-up comedy today?
I would say to be yourself. I mean, it's really be who you are. You always borrow from other people.
initially.
Yes, but to allow your personality to emerge over time, and it takes time for that to happen, but to not be so, try not to chase after it as much as allowing it to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Good advice, yeah.
You know, it does take time. I remember Jerry telling me when I started, don't even think about who you are on stage. It's going to take at least a year for that to even start to come out.
Wow. Because it's longer than a year, actually.
Yes,
I mean, that's,
but to even start,
Yeah.
to get an inkling of who you might be on stage.
That's really interesting,
Yeah, I would say, and I also I really encourage people to work clean, because when people start working dirty, it's too much of a it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's too much of a I'm losing my words here. It's too seductive. You get an easy laugh, and then you're like, oh God, that was so great. I want to get the laughs. So you start using swears, and you start going for what we call low hanging fruit, the really easy topics, and I think it's harder to be clean and original. And I encourage people to do that, and a lot of times people don't listen, and it's their path, but I think you have a chance of being more unique. I think if you work harder at that.
Good advice.
What do you think?
I tell people just to do what's funny to you.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
if your sense of humor is dirty, do that. And if that's what makes you laugh, do it. It's not my choice.
Right.
And it limits the venues you can work.
Right.
But, if that's what's funny to you,
Well,
so that's...
That's very true, but I want to say that when we started, there was no cable.
Right.
So if we wanted to get on television, we had to be clean.
Yep.
So, but yes, it's important because you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in what you're saying on stage, and if you're invested in what you're saying, then the audience is going to be invested. If you're not invested, why should they care?
Good point.
Yeah.
Do ba 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 do do a boo ba do ba.